You remember now?
Yes. You're Tonto.
That's right. Me, Tonto.
He was the first Native American TV star, famous across the globe as Tonto, the loyal companion to the Lone Ranger. But behind the scenes of the beloved show, something was very wrong. Jay Silverheels, the proud Mohawk man who played the role, was trapped. In 1957, when asked about his iconic part, he said just 3 words: "Tonto is stupid." That wasn't the only secret. He was paid half of what his white co-star earned. A director once tried to physically attack him on set for refusing to say his lines. And the name Tonto itself meant fool, a humiliation he suffered in silence. But to understand the true, quiet war this man waged against Hollywood, it's essential to first explore the incredible life he led before he was ever called Tonto. From star athlete to Hollywood stuntman. Long before Hollywood knew him as Tonto, he was Harold J. Smith, the son of a Mohawk war hero and a celebrated star athlete in his own right. He was born on May 26, 1912, on the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve in Ontario, Canada. He was one of at least 10 kids crammed into a small house. His father, Alexander Smith, was a decorated Cayuga hero from World War I, who came home deafened by artillery and stuck surviving on a tiny $49 a month government payment. Harold watched his father suffer from debilitating headaches and hearing loss every single day. A decorated veteran whose war medals couldn't feed his family. This upbringing, steeped in pride, poverty, and resilience, forged a man who would not be easily broken. That resilience found its first home in sports. By age 19, Harold was already playing box lacrosse professionally under the name Harry Smith. He and his brothers, known as Porky, Beef, and Chubby, traveled across North America, building a name and dodging the poverty that defined their lives. Harold was a phenomenon. He was so fast that he earned the nickname Silverheels after sprinting past a defender so quickly it looked like his shoes flashed silver. The name stuck. He was a star, scoring more than 4 goals a game, and coaches started assigning 2 men just to guard him. But he didn't stop at lacrosse. Harold also became a formidable boxer, fighting as a middleweight in the Golden Gloves tournament at Madison Square Garden. He made it all the way to the semifinals before taking a brutal punch that broke his jaw in 2 places. The injury ended his boxing dreams, but it taught him how to take pain and keep moving. His success as an athlete gave him a strong sense of self, but it couldn't shield him from the systemic racism of the time. This was the looming shadow of his life. Harold grew up while Canada's residential schools were actively trying to erase Indigenous languages. At his own reserve, students were beaten for speaking Mohawk. His own sister was sent away to one of these schools and came back unable to speak her own language properly. When the Great Depression hit, his family sank even deeper. His father could barely move without pain, and his mother had to barter away family heirlooms just to get food. This was the psychological root of his later conflict. He was a proud, elite athlete, but the world constantly treated him as a second-class citizen. While touring with his lacrosse team in the American South, he faced racism that was loud and inescapable. Hotels turned him away. Restaurants wouldn't serve him. He was forced to sleep on the bus while his white teammates got rooms. Once, in Louisville, police threatened him just for using a bathroom marked "whites only." A severe injury eventually ended his lacrosse career, forcing him to find a new path. That path appeared in 1937 during a lacrosse tour in Los Angeles. Comedian Joe E. Brown, a sports enthusiast, noticed him sprinting at Gilmore Stadium and offered him a small film role. Harold performed a single stunt, a diving catch that took 11 takes to get right. He was paid $150. It was twice what lacrosse paid. That small taste of Hollywood money was the ticking time bomb that pulled him into a new, treacherous world. He got a Screen Actors Guild card and started calling himself Jay Silverheels. But Hollywood didn't roll out the red carpet. He was a stuntman, earning less than $20 a day and buzzing tables at night to survive. Finally, he landed a real role in 1939's Drums Along the Mohawk, which paid $350 a week, more than he had ever made. Studios loved the exotic name Silverheels and told him to use it, but the work was humiliating. Casting directors made him strip to the waist, judging his body, not his talent. In 1946, he auditioned for Captain from Castile, starving himself so his suit would fit. The director, like all the others, made him take off his shirt. He served in World War II and returned to Hollywood with a new focus, even studying Shakespeare. In 1948, he finally got a break. A credited role as Tom Osceola in Key Largo, alongside Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. This led to his role in 1950's Broken Arrow, a film that claimed to be progressive. Jay played the great warrior Geronimo, but the lead role of Cochise went to Jeff Chandler, a white actor from Brooklyn wearing dark makeup. It was a bitter pill. Even in a film praised for its fairness, Hollywood still wouldn't let a native actor be the hero. This was the world he lived in, a world that was about to make him one of the most famous men in America, but at a terrible, hidden cost. The golden cage of Tonto. In 1949, Jay Silverheels landed the role of Tonto on The Lone Ranger, a moment that would change television history. After decades of radio silence where Tonto was voiced by white actors like John Todd and Roland Parker, and a Hollywood standard that used red-face makeup on Italian actors, Jay's casting was monumental. He had beaten 35 other actors for the part. For the first time, a Native American was playing a Native American character in a lead role on a major television series. The show was an immediate explosive hit. It became one of the first massive successes for the new ABC network, ranking as the #7 show in America during its first season and staying in the top 30 for years. Jay Silverheels was suddenly one of the most famous and recognizable indigenous people on the planet. He was a hero to millions of children, his face on lunchboxes and in magazines. He had achieved the Hollywood dream. But this dream, he quickly discovered, was a golden cage. The crisis began with the name itself. Tonto, a word the show's white creators likely picked at random, is a devastating racial slur in Spanish, meaning fool or stupid. Jay, an intelligent and multilingual man, knew this. He was forced to smile for the cameras while being called a fool by his co-star, and by millions of fans every single week. He lived with this humiliation in silence, but in a rare moment of public honesty during a 1957 visit to his home reserve in Ontario, someone asked him about his famous role. His answer was just 3 words: Tonto is stupid. Behind those words was a decade of quiet frustration. This frustration led to a secret war on set. Jay had a reputation for never reading his lines. It wasn't because he was lazy, it was because the lines were demeaning. He was handed scripts full of stiff, broken English, designed to make him sound like a stereotype. So, he simply refused to say them. Instead, he would ad-lib his own, more natural-sounding dialogue like, "Me wait here. You go into town." This act of quiet rebellion infuriated the show's directors. One director, Wilhelm Thiele, became so enraged at Jay's refusal to be a caricature that he had to be physically held back from attacking Jay on set in 1955. But Jay had an unlikely ally. Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger himself, defended his co-star. Moore would tell the furious directors, "Let it play." It sounds more natural. Jay knew how people really spoke, but Hollywood didn't want a real person. It wanted a stereotype, and he was forced to deliver it every single day. The high stakes of this cage were financial. He was paid only half of what Clayton Moore earned. While Jay's salary of about $100,000 per season sounds like a lot. For the 1950s, his white co-star was making double that for what was essentially a 2-man show. He couldn't just quit. This was his family's livelihood. The disrespect was constant. In the beginning, the show's budget was so low that Jay and Moore didn't even have dressing rooms. They were forced to change into their costumes in a gas station restroom down the road. One day, Jay had enough. He refused to get dressed, quietly standing his ground. Moore warned him that delaying the shoot could cost people their jobs, but Jay wouldn't budge. The next day, 2 private dressing rooms appeared. It was a small win, but it was a win. The stress of this constant fight, the humiliation of the role, the battle with directors, the financial disparity, and his heavy smoking, all came to a head in 1955. During a fight scene rehearsal, a stuntman fell onto Jay. Clayton Moore noticed something was wrong. Jay was walking strangely. Moore followed him to his trailer and found him clutching his chest. He was having a massive heart attack. The proud athlete who had boxed at Madison Square Garden was rushed to the hospital. He missed 8 weeks of filming. The writers explained Tonto's absence in the most ironic and demeaning way possible. They told the audience Tonto was in Washington meeting the Great White Father. While on screen he was a subservient fool, at home he was just Harold Smith, a proud husband and father. He had married Mary Doma, an Italian-American, in 1945. He famously joked to Johnny Carson that he married an Italian to get back at Christopher Columbus, and called their 4 children Indelians. But behind the joke was the man whose grandfather was a Mohawk chief, a man who was now trapped, his real identity erased by the very role that had made him a star. It's shocking to see how a life so public could hide a secret so devastating. Here on RetroFame, we're dedicated to uncovering the true, often hidden stories of the figures you thought you knew. If you believe these stories need to be told, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another deep dive. Now, for Jay Silverheels, this reveal was just the beginning. The fallout from being Tonto was even more dramatic. The fight for a new legacy. After The Lone Ranger ended in 1957, Jay Silverheels should have been on top of the world. He was one of the most recognizable actors in America. Instead, he found himself in a prison of his own fame. The role of Tonto had made him a star, but it had also boxed him in completely. Hollywood had its perfect Indian, and it didn't want anything else from him. The professional fallout was immediate and severe. He was offered a string of roles that were nothing more than faint copies of the character he just left. He made guest appearances on all the big westerns of the 1960s: Wagon Train, Wanted, Dead or Alive, Rawhide, Laramie, and Daniel Boone. But he was almost always playing the same silent, stoic native, often with barely any dialogue. He was trapped by the very image he had helped create. But the most painful blow didn't come from Hollywood studios. It came from within his own community. As the native rights movement gained momentum in the 1960s, a new generation of activists began to look at the past with angry, critical eyes. They saw Tonto not as a trailblazer, but as a symbol of subservience. One scholar famously called the character an Indian step-in fetch-it. Russell Means, a prominent leader of the American Indian movement, began using Tonto as a vicious slur, the indigenous equivalent of an Uncle Tom. Jay Silverheels was caught in an impossible crossfire. He was criticized by activists for the very stereotype he had silently fought against on set. And at the same time, networks and studios, nervous about the backlash, began to distance themselves from him. His past success, far from protecting him, was now the source of his erasure. But instead of fading away or becoming bitter, Jay Silverheels launched the true fight of his life. He refused to be a silent sidekick any longer. In the early 1960s, he began quietly supporting a new project, and by 1966, he had formally co-founded the Indian Actors Workshop in Los Angeles. This was his counter-offensive. This was his true legacy. He poured his own money, his time, and his reputation into creating a space where indigenous actors could train, rehearse, and develop their skills. He held weekly classes, first at the LA Indian Center, and later in a church, teaching acting, voice, and even stunt work. He didn't just want to complain about the bad roles. He wanted to create a new generation of artists so skilled that Hollywood couldn't ignore them. One of his students was a young actor named Michael Horse, who would later play Tonto himself in the 1981 film Reboot and become famous for his role in Twin Peaks. Silverheels didn't believe in loud protests or boycotts. He once said that a boycott by Native Americans wouldn't have the same financial impact as one by other minority groups. He believed real change had to come from the inside. So, he fought a quiet, strategic war. He ran a letter-writing campaign to President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, and top TV executives, personally urging them to create better, more dignified portrayals of Native Americans on screen. He was fighting for their identity, their pride, and their survival in the industry. He wasn't just building an acting class, he was building an army of storytellers. As his acting roles dried up, he reinvented himself yet again, taking on a second career as a harness racing driver. He trained horses at Hollywood Park and used his lingering Tonto fame to promote races, finally finding a place where he was judged for his skill, not his stereotype. But just as more serious and dignified roles were finally coming his way in the 1970s, his body betrayed him. In 1975, the man who had been a world-class athlete and survived a heart attack suffered a series of debilitating strokes. A major stroke in 1976 severely affected his speech, silencing the man who had fought so hard to find his voice. The final heartbreaking detail of his life came on July 17th, 1979. Jay Silverheels became the first ever Native American to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was the ultimate honor, a permanent recognition of his place in history. But it was a bittersweet victory. He attended the ceremony in a wheelchair, surrounded by Native dancers. The stroke had taken his ability to speak. The man who had once studied Shakespeare and had lived his lines to defy directors could now barely mumble a few words of thanks. It was a quiet, poignant end to a loud, rebellious life. A star given for the very role he had spent the last half of his life trying to overcome. Jay Silverheels died just months later, on March 5th, 1980. In the end, the truth of Jay Silverheels is not the one-dimensional sidekick he played on TV. The real man was a three-dimensional trailblazer who fought a quiet war for respect from behind enemy lines. He was a star athlete and the proud son of a chief who was forced to accept humiliation and play the fool to provide for his family. He then used the fame from that golden cage as a weapon, founding the Indian Actors Workshop to ensure the next generation wouldn't have to make the same sacrifice. His true lasting legacy isn't Tonto. It's the generations of indigenous artists, from Graham Greene to the creators of smoke signals, who stand on his shoulders. He wore the mask of Tonto so that one day they wouldn't have to. But what do you think? Does knowing the truth about the proud, intelligent man behind Tonto change how you view the Lone Ranger? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We have a new video, just like this one, coming next week. If you love digging deeper than the headlines, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss another video. If you love this story, we've got more celebrity deep dives queued up for you. Just click the videos on your screen to continue. Thanks for watching.